Mojave.
Mojave. Let's go ahead and clear up the first 447 green signals. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, can I get a time check?
Yeah, time is 9:39 and 30 seconds now.
Thank you.
I grew up in New York City, and I was crazy enough about trains that I would get on a subway on a Saturday and write the different subways to the different end of the line. Just, it was a train. In 1972, I hired out with the Santa Fe as a chair car attendant. In 1974, they decided they need engineers, so I went to Amarillo for about 3 months and went through the school there learning air systems and diesel engines and stuff, and then I was an engineer. I was in my early 30s. I was single, and you have no social life whatsoever. You're going to work at 9 o'clock in the evening and you get off the train at 9 o'clock the next morning. You want to have a personal life with women. You want to have personal life with other guys, and you just really couldn't do it. Your life is either yours or the railroads, and if it's the railroads, you're not doing anything much else. And if it's yours, you're not basically working for the railroad. When I was about 6 years old, my dad got us a line L set, and he put it on a 4x8 board. My younger brother had a figure 8, I had an oval, and my older brother had an oval, and we had 3 trains, and we'd run them around and run into each other and silly stuff like that. If you take a look at a lot of the people employed by the railroad now, you have a large number of people that are interested in trains not only as a means of employment, but as a means of hobby, and they enjoy it away from work. I think one of the things is at work it's their toy train, you have to play by their rules, and when you're doing it as a hobby, it's your toy train, you get to make the rules.
60 minutes here, 35-minute run later, we're on 60 is up.
The 60, he's run late. Even if he's later than that, he's still good.
See, rule says you stop 400 feet from the signal, but if we follow that literally here, you can't see the signal because you're in the tunnel, so you got to pull.
Well,
through
they
the tunnel
also
to
adjust the signals to be where it's.
where you see it through the tunnel.
You'll be able to see it coming out of the tunnel.
But you've never operated here before, right?
No, and I'm not necessarily wanting to operate here.
Well, you're free to observe. If you want to come in, you can come into the space and look around. But here at Bakersfield, we try to keep everybody who isn't actually running something out of the way.
That's fine.
So, well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And, oh, that's right. I remember your email. You're married to the gal who is an Amtrak conductor.
A lot of people today don't see a lot of trains. Unless you live near a rail yard or a train track, you don't see it. The trains today are moving more freight than they've ever moved, but they're doing it with fewer miles of track, fewer employees, fewer trains, fewer locomotives, and fewer people see all that. They're not a part of people's daily lives, so they're not a part of their imaginary lives, I come from a family of railroaders. My dad was the first one of his brothers not to be a railroader. His dad was a railroader, all his brothers were railroaders, but my dad hated the life, the fact that his dad was away all the time, and his brothers were away, and the missed birthdays and all that, and so he decided that was not going to be for him, and he did everything possible to discourage me. He became a dentist. I went for the railroad, and I worked for 27 years before I left early, before my retirement. I just had enough and I left. I think my generation, as opposed to the generation today, was a generation of people that did use tools. You know, you built models when you were a kid, and you grew up around cars and with friends and older brothers working on cars. And the kids today, they don't have that, and I have to even teach them how to use a screwdriver. They just don't have a clue. You know, a lot of schools, they don't have shop anymore like when I was in school, and the kids don't grow up building things. They want it already run. You come in, plug it in, turn it on, play with it, and when you're done, put it away. Now I'm from that old school where we built everything.
Bob, when he comes up from the underground again.
Comes up for air. Yeah, I just didn't want that electric saw near me. I might get jealous.
Well, you're talking about having a hole over here.
There's only, it's a flat blue, there's only one of them down there by,
here's one right here. I think here it is.
I was gonna say it's over there someplace.
Yeah, okay. I'll take the lid.
When I was in high school, as soon as my best buddy got his driver's license, we were all over Southern California watching the trains and taking photographs. I was able to ride a bunch of trains that were chartered by the Pacific Railroad Society. They would have day trips out of Los Angeles. In the springtime, when everything was green and the wildflowers were blooming, they would charter a train from LA to Bakersfield and back over the Tehachapi Pass. I like to run trains that are as close to the prototype as possible, which means trains of considerable length, like half a mile or a mile scale, which would be 30 to 60 feet. And not very many people have layouts or can build layouts at home that would accommodate 60-foot trains. But here on this layout, you know, because we have 7,000 square feet, you can do that. Modeling gives you an opportunity to go back and relive the past to a certain extent. It also lets you, work on your skills, model building, doing research. Once the track and the roadbed is in place, then we consult numerous photographs to figure out what the terrain is going to be like. The La Mesa Club, to which I belong, they're pretty much into modeling the Tehachapi Railroad as it actually existed. And they do a lot of research to make their exhibit as close to what existed in the past as they possibly could.
Well, the thing that got me into the trains was when that railroad was torn up in 1957 in Parksville, New York. I was 3, and I was walking on the tracks with my parents, and I remembered very clearly there were weeds sticking up above the rusted rails, and my mother, talking to a 3-year-old, said, "No more choo-choo." And I remember thinking, oh my God. And I fixated. I became obsessed with it. There was an atmosphere, especially around steam locomotives, that you could taste. And it's not present anywhere except in miniature. I'm very fortunate in that if I decide to make something, I can go ahead and make it. I can recreate an era. I can be anywhere I want to be. And I know that is the gist of model railroading for most guys, this freedom to escape the mundane, the present world with all of its in-your-face trappings, and go to another time, another place of your own choosing, your own making. And in this way, it is a time machine of sorts. In my mind, delusional as it may be, I consider it an art form. And there are a lot of people who don't accept neorealism as art. You know, everything must be an impressionist's idea. And prior to the impressionists, you had nothing but anal retentive portrait painters and landscape painters and sculptors who got, if you didn't get the muscle tone just right, it wasn't art. So maybe it's the era, maybe it's the time we live in, maybe it's the overabundance of easy to reproduce accurate reality in the form of television and film. I know there are a lot of guys who get it, and the majority of people don't, and that's okay. You know, there's beer for them too.
That's good guess. Derek, Andrew, just hold everything right the way it is. I'll do that.
Knot 4, engine, ENG, Santa Fe initials ATSF, 170, 17 knot, run, RUN as second, SCCO.
Knot 4804, clear sea line of left to Mojave, LG, East IEMF.
Continuous rail over it.
And make everybody
Duck crawl under, yeah.
Yeah, but you have to be athletic to work this.
What's the matter?
Oh, looks like we're tight engaged, plus whoever spiked this isn't a track person and the spike head's sticking up where the flange needs to go. Because they're using the crappy, full-size, oversized spikes.
and they're not, those aren't even lining up gauge-wise.
Well, that's what I'm trying to
I'd
fix.
have to go get out my track gauge and shoot, I can line this up and spike it down myself.
Well, yeah.
The railroad bridges a gap between my mechanical side and my love for history. The era that we're modeling was 35 years before I was born. The steam engines were still in heavy use. The diesels were just starting to come into their own. There were still people on the railroad, whereas nowadays, with the computers and the centralizing of control and maintenance and so forth, there's nobody out there now. I mean, every train had at least 5 to 7 people on it, whereas nowadays you have 2, and they're trying to get rid of those. I originally started as just an engineer, and probably around 2000 or so, I started getting more involved in the setup. It was kind of the step away from the whimsical railroading where freelance, where you just, do whatever you want type thing, and it was more, well, what was the history of this? Why did they do it this way? We're one of the few large layouts like this that actually look like the prototype and then operate like the prototype. I mean, that's why we can get people to come 2,500 miles to, a couple times a year to play trains. I mean, you look forward to getting enough crazy people in the same building that you could fly this thing all night. I mean, you could do 36 hours straight, and you could put in your 8 hours, you could go home, take a nap, wake up 6 to 8 hours later, go back down and go at it again for another 8 hours. I mean, it really brings in the flavor of what was going on back then if you can just kind of roll into the cycle. We have people that have worked on the railroads, and for better or worse, you get that railroad flavor, and it wouldn't quite be the same without them.
He's going to get the order out of Mojave.
Right, so then he can move against it.
Now I can give him right over 804, both 804s, because they're
in your territory.
In my territory. And I don't know if that's quite legal, but
3.5.
Oh, that's, we're in a problem.
Okay. 1.5.
All right.
1. Half. Half of that, and that'll do.
See, we're not in the clear.
That'll do. That'll do.
About 5.5 years ago, I got started by another youth member down here. Just about ever since then, I've been hooked. Everybody has their first visions of trains, and most of these guys, they grew up in the 40s, 50s, and they remember this time period, and those are the images that stick with them, and that's the stuff they want to model. They're, a vision with some of the club members to recreate something that will never happen again, which is the transition steam diesel period. They want to, set that goal to build, exact replica of the railroad back like it was in 1952, and that's a long ways off. So I think I'll be an old man before it's finished. It's a tough club to get into, you might say. They're not always forgiving and understanding, but I've gotten in the mix finally, and you got to get some respect first. And I am considering a railroad career, and if I hadn't gotten into model railroading and met the people who do this for a living, and I don't think I know what I'm getting into, the lifestyle change I'll have to make. It can be really hard, going to work at odd hours, getting not that much rest, and then going right back to work again. It limits the time with your family, and that's something you got to think about. And you really have to have a passion or determination to do it, because you can be easily driven off. It's not a friendly society.